Thank you very much. Good words.
Good morning. It's a great pleasure and honor to be back here, and first I would like to congratulate His Highness Sheikh Mohammed bin Rashid Al Maktoum, the Vice President and the Prime Minister of the United Arab Emirates and ruler of Dubai, for the wisdom to have installed such a big and such an important meeting. My task at the beginning is to talk about the year 2018, just to provide you with a context for the discussions, for the great discussions you will have during this meeting. So many of the points I just touch upon will be further developed. When I opened the annual meeting in Davos 2008, just 10 years ago, at the beginning of the financial crisis, I said we are now entering a financial crisis which will be followed by an economic crisis, afterwards by a social crisis, and finally will end up in an intergenerational crisis. So where do we stand now? We have fairly well mastered the financial crisis. We avoided with quantitative easing, with a concerted effort, we avoided a complete breakdown of our global financial system. But we should not forget we accumulated debt, which today corresponds more or less to 200% of our global GDP. Where do we stand with the economic crisis? 2 weeks ago, I would have said we are moving out and we have 2 years in front of us where the international organizations like OECD, like IMF and so on predict sound, comprehensive growth. Now, if we look at the stock exchanges, we may ask ourselves what's happening. I still believe in sustained growth, but let's face it, what we have is an economy which became, to a certain extent, a drag addict to low interest rate credits and to capital in abundance. Now what we are seeing at the stock exchanges is like the beginning of a detoxification cure. We have to make the patient independent on this cheap and abundant capital. Where do we stand with the social crisis? Yes, we are in the midst of a social crisis which is characterized by the big gap which we have in the world between, it's the income gap, it's the distribution which is considered to be unfair. And what about the intergenerational crisis? I just should mention, and you, Your Excellency, you mentioned our aging. We have, when we look at the next generation, we cheat the next generation because social welfare, we underfinance. Infrastructure, we have a yearly gap of about $800 billion. If we look at our education system, it's an education system which was right for maybe for the end of the 19th and the 20th century, but does not suffice the requirements of the 21st century. So that's where we stand. The World Economic Forum is publishing every year a risk report where we ask 2,000 specialists around the world to indicate what are the biggest risks which we have to face. Let me just enumerate 5 or 4 of the most important risks which we defined this year. First, the geopolitical risk. What is happening? We have moved the last years from a unipolar world to a multipolar world, but at the same time we moved also from a uniconceptual to a multi-conceptual world with different values, with different concepts, how we should run our national and our global affairs. Such a multi-conceptual world, of course, spurs many more conflicts because we do not have the same value base. We only have shared interests, possibly shared interests. So the world of tomorrow will be much more fragile, characterized probably by more conflicts. That's the number one risk. Second risk, what I already mentioned, the income disparity which we have, which requires, I would say, not anymore quantitative easing, but qualitative easing. We have to make global growth more inclusive. We have developed, together with OECD, a new inclusive development index, where we look not just at GDP growth as the sole indicator for how a country, a government is performing, but looking also at sustainability, at inclusiveness. So we have to move much more into a situation where nobody is left behind. The third risk, which I would like to mention here, which came out in our report, is cybersecurity. Just imagine for a moment, you would have to drive to Abu Dhabi. There are no rules which govern the traffic. You know there are people out who want to have your money, and this is not just science fiction. Maybe you are on the road and suddenly the car accelerates and you lose complete control over your car. This is what could happen and what is already happening in cyberspace. So we need much more global cooperation to create a more reliable cyberspace, because the cyberspace is the backbone of the economy of the future, of our economy, which will much more be an e-economy and not anymore so much a physical economy. Now, 3 years ago, when I was addressing this audience, I coined the notion of the fourth industrial revolution. The fourth industrial revolution being different from what usually is called Industry 4.0. Industry 4.0 just means to make our production processes more effective, more rational, using automatization. The fourth industrial revolution means a complete change of everything we are doing, not only of our business models, of our economies, but it has a big impact on us. Your Excellency, you mentioned artificial intelligence. There were actually two events related to the fourth industrial revolution which show us how much and how fast humankind is changing. First, we read last week about the first cloning of monkeys. Just imagine, from a genetic point of view, monkeys are not so different from human beings. But what was for me the most fascinating event in 2017 was the development of the Alphago software, which, talking about artificial intelligence, which means we are at a turning point for humankind. We speak about learning machines, we speak about robots, but we still have in mind that we teach those machines how to behave, how to think. But actually, the big breakthrough with DeepMind last year was that the machine figures out now itself how to solve a problem. So we don't have to teach the robot anymore what to do. We just tell the robot what the problem is, and the robot will figure out what the solution is. Sundar Pichai in Davos said this invention is as important for humankind as the invention of fire. It reshapes our whole comprehension of what we are. If robots have a super neuro system where we do not even understand anymore what the algorithm behind the problem solving is, so we have to ask ourselves, what makes us as human beings different? And here, what comes to mind is, of course, something robots, computers never will be able to imitate us, which means to have feelings, which means to show empathy, which means love, which means values. Let me, for 2018, and if I refer to our annual meeting in Davos, just highlight two big issues which we have to address. The first is 40%, Your Excellency, you mentioned, of jobs will be lost due to artificial intelligence. We have to do reskilling and upskilling today, and in Davos we launched a big initiative to reskill 10 million people until the year 2020. So reskilling and upskilling is the responsibility of each government and of each company. The other thing in Davos is, which so much preoccupies the people, is the question of gender parity. And here, it's not just a quantitative question, it's a qualitative question. Not just having parity in the composition of our boards, of our management, of our governments, but it means to accept female values exactly on the same level as male values. And if you go back to this revolution caused by artificial intelligence, which means what makes us really different as human beings, our love, our empathy. Those are the female values. So we have to create a change of mindset where female values are much more integrated into the management of our governments and of our business entities. Now, final point. What leadership qualifications do we need in this new world? We cannot predict completely the future, but change is not happening. We can shape change. And I am in admiration of this country because it has a vision of the future which we do not find around the world anymore. We have to imagine the future. We have to design the future. What future do we really want? And then we have to explore the future. We have to create the roadmap to approach, to realize the vision which we have our future. And finally, in exploring, we also have to allow to learn very fast in doing the next steps. So, ladies and gentlemen, dear friends, where do we stand in 2018? I know only one thing for sure. Never before the speed of change has been so fast as in 2018. But also, never again the speed of change will be so slow as it is in 2018. I wish you a great World Governance Summit, and again, my congratulations for having achieved such an event with such a great impact. Thank you.